All right. So I sat down with Joey Mure. Joey has a brand called Wealth Without Wall Street. Joey's brand includes a podcast, a community, and a program on how you can build wealth outside of Wall Street stocks and what most people have been taught over the years. While this podcast wasn't extremely focused on real estate, it provides a great overview of how investors can become wealthy using different methods that you may have heard on some of the other episodes on my show. Joey's interview was amazing because he spoke to me in a way that I hear all too much. Wall Street has lobbied for so long to get these tax breaks, and it's been ingrained in our life that Wall Street's the only way to get passive income and become wealthy. But there's definitely a better way to accumulate wealth. So thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoy this show. Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. In each episode, we'll sit down with successful people that turn to real estate to build and grow their wealth. We do a deep dive into why they chose real estate and what makes it so attractive to them. We explore why people in their industry could also benefit from passively investing in real estate. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced investor, a doctor or a professional athlete, love your job or hate your job, our show is here to help you build a profitable real estate portfolio while maximizing your free time and minimizing stress. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from some of the best in the business. Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. All right, thank you so much for tuning in today to Passive Investors Playbook. My name is Charlie Hardage. I am joined today by Joey Mure. Joey is the co-founder and partner at Wealth Without Wall Street, an online community that seeks to re-educate business owners and families on how money truly works. Wall Street is not just a street in New York City that puts Americans' money at risk, but it is also commonly taught mindset. Wealth Without Wall Street exists to help people who want to become financially free without ever having to invest through Wall Street or becoming debt-free. Joey, I'm really excited to have you. I love, number one, I love your business name, the website. I know you guys have a podcast as well, and just this whole community. And I think, really one of the reasons we were talking before the show, one of the reasons I started my podcast is because most people only know about Wall Street, right? They know about the hedge funds, they know about IRAs, they know about 401ks. If you do have money left over, what do? Mutual fund, right?
Yep.
That's pretty much it. And so in this episode, just for the audience, in this episode, we're actually going to talk more about not so much real estate, but more passive investing and investor DNA. And so I get a lot of requests from people that are not fits for the audience. And I loved Joey's profile and just looking at his website. So you're going to hear less real estate, but a lot more ideas. And so anyway, Joey, I'm really pumped to have you. Like I said, do you mind sharing a little bit more about you, your background and your company?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, Charlie, I love being in the room with like-minded people. And it sounds like you are the person that we're talking to every day. Like we're opening the doors for people and exposing them to ideas that they've always been there. It's not like these are new ideas, most of them. They're just kind of hidden from the purview of the natural person. And the thing is Wall Street has done a ridiculously good job of making it super easy to turn off the creativity part of your brain and just say, man, hand us your money. We're smarter than you anyway, and we're going to be able to invest it for you on your behalf. And you just go about doing what you do best, which is keeping your head down and working for 40 years. And we'll see you in your 60s. And to be honest, it's like the best marketing tactic of all time. And until you start to really dig and be exposed to these things, you just don't know that they exist. So, man, Wealth Without Wall Street is really more my story. It sounds like part of your story. is realizing that what I've always done, like that whole work for 40 years and keep your head down and just put money blindly away and hope that it's enough to accumulate for some time in the future, that just doesn't work. And I need to find alternatives. And so yeah, that's kind of how the whole idea began. And I'm happy to share more, like what drove me to that in 2009, 2010, whenever I started learning this. But I'll let you be the one to tell if that's interesting or not.
Well, I definitely think it's interesting, and that's actually where I was going to head next because, man, I love what you. Well, I hate what you said, but it's true. Wall Street will do the work. You keep your head down. I mean, think about it. And I've brought this up on other episodes, so maybe my audience is kind of sick of it. But you and I, when we were first starting out, didn't have these massive marketing budgets and we didn't have this platform. But Wall Street billions of dollars and they invest hundreds of millions of dollars. They have lobbyists. Hey, we can get you, tax benefits in an IRA and a 401k, but they're keeping, and I think you said 40 years, they're keeping your money for 40 years. They're making money multiple times every year, month, however that works. But I would love to understand how, because I've only been in this mindset for the last 3 years, 3.5 years now, Joey. You've been doing it for 14 years ish. What led you to saying to learning there's something else out there? It's been there, but I haven't seen it.
Well, first I'll tell you the thing that kind of sparked for me was I have five daughters.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have $5 14 years ago, but I had two, and I was starting to make a lot of money in the mortgage business, but it came at a cost. Like it was more than I anticipated I would ever make in a job. But what I found is I was never really off, right? So maybe somebody that's listening can relate to this. I would routinely go on vacation with my family. And I would say, hey, girls, my wife, you guys go on down to the beach. I'll be right behind you. I have to take this one more call.
Yeah.
And 3 hours later, I'm walking down that boardwalk behind the beach or behind the condos or whatever. And there's my family walking back up the boardwalk the opposite way with those just pissed off faces. Like
Sunburnt too. They've been
sunburnt,
yeah.
and they're beat because they've been outside the whole day. And I'm the one that missed it. And they're looking at me, and they don't even have to say anything. Like yeah. I can see it in their face, the disappointment, the discouragement that I'm physically with them, but I am mentally not present.
Yeah.
And that was just one little thing that I was lying to myself, telling myself, hey, I'm working hard for them, right? I need to provide for them. And while I was providing for them, I was trading the people that I love the most for dollars,
mm-hmm.
and trading that time for money. And so I realized, I look up and I'm like, man, all that I've ever done is put money into 401ks, into IRAs. And I started looking into even 529 plans for my daughter's college.
Yeah.
And I thought, this isn't working, right? I'm making more money than I've ever made, and I don't feel any more freedom. And it was like that. There's like something that clicked. I didn't know what the answer was, but something that clicked that said, more income doesn't equal more freedom. And I'll say that again, because maybe you're listening, this is the first time it clicks for you. More income doesn't equal more freedom. When that income is passive and I'm not present, I'm not required to be the asset to produce that income, and that exceeds my expenses, that's the only freedom that exists. And so anyways, I'll just say there was life experiences that happened that taught me this. And then couple that with a book that I read in 2010 that really opened my eyes that I was not in control, and I was in a hope strategy that I didn't want to be in. Those two things combined change the trajectory of all this. And then we can totally get into all the different things we've invested in since then. But if without the vision and like the why or why not, none of the investments even matter.
Yeah, man, I hate that for you, but what I love about that story, Joey, is the fact that you caught that yourself. Where yeah, I'm doing better than I could have ever imagined, and I'm probably yeah, you have two daughters, and you love them, and your wife, you're happy with the family, but you're not spending that quality time, or heck, maybe even much time with them, right? You're missing out on vacations. I was in sales. A lot of the audience is, in sales and in some capacity, they can totally resonate with that story of the beach. I have almost a very similar story. And I remember my daughter was like 5. She's like, "How come you weren't at the beach?" I said, "Well, I'm working remotely. I'm not really taking a day off. So, I took a few days off, but not the whole week." And anyway, it was just, why am I justifying this, right? Why am I losing? Why am I taking time away from the family? And then
Right.
there's another story. This only happened a year and a half ago, Joey, where um, I was done with grad school. I just got done, but I had also just taken a new job. And I was putting her to bed one night, and she said, "Daddy, I thought when you were done with school, we were going to be able to hang out more." And I was like, holy crap. So that really, man, that really hurt bad. And I'm so glad she said that, because that, like you, caused me to take a step back and like, okay, what am I doing with my life? Why am I doing, this is not what I want. Money is great, but what I want is that time freedom. And then I love that you doubled down on what you said, and passive income is the only freedom that exists. And I love that. So yeah, thank you for telling your story. I mean, it's kind of deep and little vulnerable, but I love that that's kind of what set you off. And okay, now we got to figure something out. So walk me through that. I guess that next part, you realized, yes, I'm doing well, but I'm giving up my time with my family, who I love the most in this world, for some more money. What did you do? Like, what was your next step or steps?
Well, like I said, it wasn't super clear on what the solution would be and how to get there. But the first step that I recognized from reading that book in 2010, or excuse me, it was in 2009, I read the book. 2010 is when I actually took action. But I realized I didn't have access to capital, right? Even though I was making lots of money, I was putting money in places that were inherently keeping me from accessing them. And that's one of the greatest tactics of Wall Street, is to give you this like easy button that, man, my 401k, I can just blindly put money into it every pay period. I don't even have to be involved. It's just siphoned off of my paycheck. It's tax, free. It's deferred, for a future date. Oh man, this is great. But the actuality, and I'll relate this to you, Charlie. Like, you look at deals on a regular basis. Deals don't happen without capital.
Right.
And what I found myself in, and I started putting these puzzle pieces together, is like, man, I was in the mortgage business, and deals would actually come to me. And when I started to realize that I had multi six figures in a 401k, and I didn't think I could take advantage of deals, it was because I had knowingly and voluntarily put money away into places that kept me from being involved in deals that I wanted to invest in. I was limited to the mutual funds and the things that were in that 401k that were not going to create freedom today.
Right.
The only freedom that it was going to create was hopefully in my 60s,
Yeah.
which, by the way, your daughter at that point doesn't want to hang out with you.
Right.
So let's be real. Like, my daughter isn't sitting in the back of my car. I'm dropping her off at preschool, and she says, "Hey, are you going to pick me up today?" And I'm like, "No, I got to work." She's like, "Well, why do you have to work?" "Well, because I have to pay for all these things like the car, the house, whatever." "Well, we already have a car. We already have a house." She's like, "What does that have to do with anything? Like, why can't we just hang out? Why can't you just pick me up?" And so the freedom I want is not just freedom in general. It's actually has a timeline. It's today.
Yeah.
And a 401k, an IRA, all these things put money into a place where I couldn't access them today. It didn't matter what the rate of return was, or was it? It just was limiting my access. And so I started to put money into new locations that I could access, and they started to pile up. And what that did is it gave me the freedom to then say, again, I didn't know what to invest in yet, but I knew I had access to capital. And 4 years later, I actually decided, I was like, man, this is making such a big impact in my life. I want to teach other people to do this. And I was sitting at a conference with my now business partner, and I was just seeing all these people being impacted by this whole concept. And I was like, why don't more people know about this? And it was just like a lightning bolt. Like God put his thumb in my back and he was like, why don't you teach them?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm making like over $300,000 in the mortgage business. My wife's pregnant. Like she doesn't work. Like this is comfortable and known and all this stuff. But it was like undeniable that I needed to be a part of the solution. So having all that capital stacked up gave me the freedom to leave what was known and comfortable to start this business, Wealth Without Wall Street, with Russ, my business partner. And then things started to open up in terms of what should I invest in for passive income. And so, anyways, that's kind of the step two in the process that we took.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I think it's interesting because when there's certain people, people that would, want to get better. I'm going to try to say this nicely, but that want to get better, want to improve. They do listen to podcasts like this, right? They do go to conferences like what you and Russ did. They're not set, they're not happy with status quo, right? They're always looking to get 1% better every day. And I think when, you sounds like you've had this experience too of you start talking and people are like, well, hold on, Joey, I missed the first part. Can you start over? And they kind of interrupt because they're like, this is great. I've never heard of this before. And I think it's through podcasts like this, through conferences and social media. Who do you follow on social media? I don't follow a lot of the people I went to high school with and college with because not actually, we weren't friends then. We're not friends now. Right. But I follow people that, talk about stuff like this because I'm always interested in learning. And so I love that you went from making great money to starting something new and fresh that you're very passionate about. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of people that are like, Joey, what is this about? Like, I'm interested. So then you start this community, Wealth Without Wall Street. And I'd love to talk about that. Like, what do you guys do in your community?
Yeah. Well, and I'll share this in light of what really was the next step for us. And it was, man, we started on this path of infinite banking. Like that's where I
Yeah.
was saying we started putting capital in places we could access. It's a concept that you can research as much as you want. We have coaches that are trained in this, and by all means, if you want to learn more, we can help you. But read a book, like go to YouTube. You'll learn about infinite banking. It's super awesome. Once we started doing that, when we started the community of Wealth Without Wall Street, it was actually around this concept of infinite banking. And then we had all these clients with lots and lots of cash. And they were saying, what do we do with it? And to be honest, Russ and I didn't have any clue. Like we're both, rednecks from Alabama. Like we had no idea. And so we started interviewing people that are experts in passive income on our podcast. And as we did that, we started to gather like, wow, there's so many things that you could invest in. I wonder what is the right step for us. And we started thinking about, you can't just invest in things because they sound good. You have to also be aligned with them.
Right.
Right. And so our community became a place of exposure, right, of ideas, but then also like a process that people could walk through. And they could say, man, there's all these steps it takes to become financially free. There's really 5 main pillars: vision, infinite banking, passive income, tax strategy, and then structures and planning. like estates and wills and things of that nature. And there's all these things that need to be done. What's my right next thing? And so you have to know, what am I consistently working on? And that's what our community is around. We have masterminds, we have just general community members. And those are the things that we're working on together as a group, like helping each other to move up in all those areas. But the main step in passive income is don't start investing until you know what sort of investor you are,
Yeah.
because you as the investor is more important than the investment. I'll say that because most people get that backwards. They think very little of themselves as an investor. They think everything has to do with the investment. And so that what do? They chase rate of return. They chase tax benefits. They chase, terms, whatever the case is. But they forget that they are a huge part of the equation. And I'll say this, that's what pushed us to develop the investor DNA profile,
Hey,
which,
Joe, I
yeah.
want to pause you right there because I want to go back real quick to infinite banking and
Oh,
then
okay.
talk about the community just for the audience. And then I totally want to get into investor DNA because I love what we were talking about before we started recording. Just for the audience. So Joey was talking about infinite banking. I do this personally myself. It's basically you buy a whole life insurance policy or some type of life insurance policy, not term, and there's a cash value in there. You can get interest and dividends on the policy, and then you're able to pull out cash and invest that in real estate, crypto, whatever you want to do. You can invest. The only reason I wanted to bring that up is because Joey, you had mentioned people were doing infinite banking, so they had this huge cash value.
Right.
But then you're like, well, now what? And you didn't have that community at the time. You had the community of infinite banking, but you didn't have the next step. And so you have developed that by, interviewing people on your podcast, connecting with them. And so now it's more of a community, all around community. And then the next point I had was what you do, all those 5 pillars that you mentioned, Joey, and I'm not going to repeat them, but those 5 pillars that you were talking about, you're basically teaching families that have $50 million are taught this. They have people that do it for them. What you're doing is you're not, people don't have to have $50 million to be in your program. You're doing this to common peasants like me, right? That's my word, not Joey's. But you're teaching these strategies that they use, and I love that about your community. So that's more for the audience. But let's get into investor DNA.
Yeah. So the basic premise is that God has created you with very unique, specific things. The way you see the world is unique from your neighbor or your sister or your brother. I mean, it's amazing. Within one family, I've even seen twins that are dramatically different in the way that they see the world. And it's because we're just really complex beings, right? God is not, he's not really basic. He's very complex. And so he gives you both unique wiring and also unique experiences and even work-related experiences that have a big impact on what you should invest in and how you should invest. And so we capitalized on that by saying, well, what is your DISC profile? You're familiar with that, Charlie?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the DISC, those are all, very generic boxes that people sort of, lean more heavily on one of those 4. And we couple that with, once you take the assessment, you figure out, man, I'm an SC or I'm a DI or whatever the case is. And then we couple that with a matrix that we call the passive income matrix. It's 10 different strategies, and it's everything from land flipping to long-term rentals to short-term rentals to syndications to car washes to information and e-commerce businesses, those sort of things. All those things have pros and cons depending on what your DISC profile is. Like, for instance, if I'm a high D and I want to look at land flipping as a potential passive income stream. In fact, Russ and I have created over $28,000 a month just in land flipping notes, and it's a
Wow.
really cool strategy if you've never heard about it. But let's say I'm interested in that and I'm a D. The pros for that are going to say, man, you're going to get high ROI. You're going to be able to do deals. You're going to move quickly. You can buy at a discount. Like all those are things that a high D really loves. And then on the con side, you're going to see there's a lot of systems. There's a lot of processes and mailers and things that just are boring as sin to you. Like you're going to hate it. But if those if you know those going into it, then you can either one still go down that path, just knowing that I have to solve for those systems and processes, either with software or virtual assistants or something, or maybe I want to partner with somebody who that would be their jam.
Yeah.
And I'll just be the money and the face of the business, and they can be behind the scenes. Like as long as you understand what those things are going into it, then when you invest in those places, you really are aligned. And that to me is what the investor DNA is all about, is making sure that you're aligned. Because when you don't, you're far more likely to invest in things that are either going to slow your process or your momentum as an investor getting to financial freedom, or it could derail you completely. And I have stories about all the above, both personally and for people in our community.
Yeah. I love that you have that profile because before, so I've been in multifamily 3.5, 4 years, somewhere in there. And before that, I was looking at podcasts and forums and all that, just trying to figure out what I knew as real estate. I didn't know what in real estate. There's so many asset classes and
Yep.
niches. And so I started looking at some stuff. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that, and just there's that shiny object syndrome. There's always something really cool. And I think if I had some type of profile or even thought about, what am I good at? What am I bad at? What do I like? What do I dislike? Then I could at least whittled it down and spent, not 5 years, but maybe only 2 years trying to figure it out. Right. So I love
Yeah,
that you
that's
guys have
that's the
that.
key, by the way, because again, what is the goal? Financial freedom today. It's not how long do we put this off? It's like, how can I compress time?
Yeah.
And so everything in our community is around giving back more of that as fast as possible. And so you just leapfrog by using a tool like Investor DNA.
Yeah, love that, man. That's awesome. Okay, so you said something that you and Russ do some land flips and made. I think it's $28,000 or $28,000 a month. There's actually something that I want to highlight that I think is even cooler. And we were talking about this before the show. You've not mentioned it here yet, but how the heck did you grow your passive income from $2,500 a month to 24 months later? What is that? 20x? You went to $50,000 a month in passive income. What?
Oh,
How the heck did you do that?
well, I'll tell you this. If you don't believe me, go back. Everything's been documented, right? So in June of 2020, we started to realize like, man, passive income has to be the focus. We've got a lot of information. To your point, Charlie, like we had gathered a lot of guests since 2017 is when we started this whole interview process. And for 3 years, we had talked to a lot of people
Yeah,
and we had gotten interested. We tried a couple little things here and there, but we really weren't dialed in and focused. And we said, if we're really serious about this, we need to start putting ourselves out there, right? Like we need to start documenting what is our passive income, and we need to start putting it on our podcast. So every month you can actually go back and listen to every one of our monthly shows where we do our personal report. We have a spreadsheet. It's not super exciting looking. It's very basic because I'm not a spreadsheet genius. Um, but it actually on our website too, you can see the breakdown by year that we have listed under our passive income report, at the bottom of our website. But one of the things that we did when we started to measure our passive income and report on it, it grew exponentially. And the reason is because it creates accountability,
yep,
right? I mean, you and I could be having this conversation and say, man, passive income's great. Like I want more of it. But until I say, hey, Charlie, you know what? Next month, I want you to ask me how my passive income grew this month. I don't want to show up to that meeting empty handed. Or if I do one time, I don't want to do it again.
Right.
And so for us to put it on our podcast was like, okay, this is, we better focus on
This
this.
is
Like,
real. Yeah.
we better put our money where our mouth is. And so we started to really just hit the ground running. We put a lot of capital into land flipping. We started a short-term rental business. I already had one long-term rental that actually we used to launch our short-term rental business. I bought a drop shipping company. We had, let's see, we bought into an ATM syndication where we own 7 different ATMs. I bought an RV that I rent out. We've even partnered on some e-commerce brands. There's all sorts of things you can, like you said, you can check all those out. But the key factor that I want everybody to know is not, hey, look at us, we've got all this passive income. The point is, man, if it's something important to you, get in community with other people doing this and report on it. Because as soon as you do that, that's what our masterminds do. We have 2 levels of masterminds, and those guys get in there every month and they say, hey, I'm at 20% of my passive income to monthly expense goals. Or I'm at, like a guy on our call Monday, he said he was at 125%.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's freedom, right?
Yeah.
He was able to report that to the group and everybody's high-fiving him. So that's what it takes to really get hit the fast button to financial freedom.
Yeah, accountability is huge, and I think especially in our business, or our business where there's one or two of us kind of running it. If you don't have an accountability partner, you got to have a very, very strong drive to keep going. And I felt like I had that, but I actually have a accountability partner. We meet every Wednesday. Talked to him a couple hours ago, and we were actually just talking about a book that I'm currently reading, The Gap and the Gain. Of 3 years ago, I was here, or I didn't have any property. Now I'm here, have a ton of property, and it's just been so good to compare that with him, because he has great ideas. I think I have decent ideas. But we're able to grow. We've grown so much in the last year plus that we have been working together that would not have happened. Probably would be at 20% of what we've done, if we did it by ourselves. So I love that point about accountability partners. I love that not only do you and Russ do that with each other, but now that's embedded in your mastermind groups. Because I think, if I say, hey, I got a great idea, maybe that's something that you had never heard of, Joey, and now you can also learn about it. You grow. Anyway, I love that idea. I think that's very, very underrated, having an accountability partner. Man, that's amazing. So you went from 2,500 in June 2020 to 50,000 a month through, you mentioned a lot like drop shipping and e-commerce and ATM syndication and real estate, and other aspects. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and by the way, those reports are not all roses. I mean, like,
Right.
there's a lot of negatives that we found along the way, and I think that's actually really beneficial too. Is that you hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we wanted to say, okay, this guy got on our podcast and shared this idea, and was our experience of it. Not all of them worked out,
Yeah.
but also, just because it didn't work out for us doesn't mean it's not for you based on your investor DNA. So all those things are connected.
Yeah. Man, I love that so much. Okay. So you mentioned that investor DNA a few times. Do you have something on your website? How does that work if someone wants to figure out what type of investor they are?
Yeah. I'll give you the link. It's very simple to remember. It would be wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/ passive investors playbook. So
Okay.
just think of this podcast and you go to that landing page, wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/ passive investors playbook. There's a link to the investors DNA. There's also, if you just want to talk to one of our coaches, there's a free 15-minute call there. And then I've mentioned the masterminds. If you have interest in what those might look like, there's also a link on there concerning
Okay.
that. So
Cool. Well, Joey, look, I've had such an amazing time talking to you. I think what really hit home with me was, well, number one, I love the business name. I don't even know if I mentioned that, but um, it's so new to most people. Even apartment syndications that I do, most of the time I talk to people, they're like, "Wait, what? I've never heard of that before." Same thing with the infinite banking and some of those other strategies. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, but most of these businesses don't have these multi-million-dollar marketing budgets like Wall Street does. So
That's right.
I love that you named it that you have a community where you all just put your heads together and hold each other accountable. I know we have a few minutes left and want to ask you about a recent book that you've read that really stands out to you.
Well, I'll say this. The most impactful book of all time for me was Become Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash.
Yep.
That if you haven't read that, you have to read that. Just on a personal level, I actually have been reading a book called Trust by Henry Cloud, and it's not really a business book, although he makes many business analogies and stories. Because man, what we do is every day, whether it's investing of any sort, trust is a major factor,
Yeah.
and understanding how that is derived and what factors play into that. Relationships and trust are just an immeasurable thing that the more you can understand about that, the more informed you can be.
Very cool. What can people expect to see from you and Wealth Without Wall Street in the next few years?
Man, more of the same. I think to your point is, helping more and more families. We have live events now that we started this year for people twice a year. And I
Okay.
believe those are going to be growing bigger and bigger. I think, like I just told you, we were just in Nashville the end of August, and we had about 140, 150 people there from all across the country, from Alaska to California to New Hampshire and Florida. I mean, it was like all four
Wow.
corners. It was
Yeah.
crazy. But we're going to do more of those sort of things, grow our masterminds, and just continue to stay focused on this idea of financial freedom and passive income. So getting better and better at our craft.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Um, what um, what would be the best way for people to reach out to you and connect?
I would say if you go to that same website,
Mhm.
wealthwithoutwallstreet.com /passive investors playbook.
Okay.
You can, like I said, that's the best way to connect with someone on our team. But if you want to, you can also check out our podcast. It's just called Wealth Without Wall Street. We're really not creative, Charlie. Like we just come up with one name and everything is called that. So uh, check us out there, or you can join our community for free. And in there, there's a DM function. Just hit me up with a message, and tell me you heard me on this podcast. I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Joey, man, I've had an amazing time talking to you and uh, learning from you, and I love your story. Unfortunately, it resonates with me, and I have a similar story. One thing we did not mention, and I actually want to put you on the spot here, but you also co-authored a book. It's soon to be released. It's called, again, very creative name here, but Wealth Without Wall Street: Three Steps to Freedom Through Passive Income. Where's that going to be released? Is that going to be on your website?
Yeah, our hope is that it's going to be on Amazon and
Okay.
everything will be very easy to get to there. But yeah, it's coming soon. It's been a labor of love, and I highly recommend if you're going to write a book through a ghostwriter company, which for me, that's the only way I would write one, just because I'm just not gifted in that area. Make sure that they don't go out of business in the
Oh,
middle of writing your book, because that's just not really advisable.
okay. Hey, that was a bonus. That was a freebie for the audience. So yeah, thank you. Man, Joey, thank you so much for being here. It's been great talking to you. I will put all the show notes in the episode, all your links, all that in the show notes. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always good to be with like-minded people, and wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's show, brought to you by H&K Investment Group, your home for passive investing. If you want to learn more about how you can invest with us, please check out our website at hkigllc.com. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to our podcast. Please leave us a review to let us know how we are doing. Feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or Facebook. As always, I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. Catch you next time.